we'd go maybe around Berlin into some woods. My dad loved to be out in nature. He would say that's where he finds God, out in nature. I was a kid, I was a little girl. My family liked to go out on the weekend. My dad owned a store, so he couldn't leave during the week. Unless during the war, maybe I avoided getting in certain problems because I had a guardian angel. How do I know? I survived a lot, other people didn't.
Wenn, mein Schatz Hochzeit macht, fröhliche Hochzeit macht, hab ich meinen traurigen Tag. Geh ich in mein Kämmerlein, dunkles Kämmerlein, weine, meinen Schatz, meinen lieben Schatz. Blümlein blau, verlore nicht. Vöglein süß, du singst auf grüner Heide. Ach, wie ist die Welt so schön, sie hört. Singet nicht, blühet nicht, denn es ist ja vorbei. Alles Singen ist nun aus. Des Abends, wenn ich schlafen geh, denk ich an mein Leide, an mein Leide.
My grandmother was born in 1923 in Berlin, and she grew up in Kreuzberg, where her family owned a small toy shop and business there, and they lived in the apartment above. She moved to Canada, specifically Calgary, in 1953, which is the year before her two sons were born, her twin boys, my father and my uncle. They had a pretty good life, actually, in Calgary. She talks about how there was this cute Dairy Queen down the street from them, and they used to play in the parks, and they had a nice, sweet life there. I think, though, she always had some yearning or small little deep sadness about having left Germany and left something behind there?
Well, we had a good time when we grew up. There were lots of kids around, all ages. And again, we opened the door and they would go out, ride their trikes or be around the block somewhere. You didn't need to worry.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't think of anybody coming to kidnap them. They just went and found some playmates and they were gone all day playing baseball across on the field or foot soccer or whatever. They got themselves real busy. And then in the afternoon, some mother and I, we'd get together and play badminton in our parking lot.
Ging heut Morgen übers Feld, da noch auf den Gräsern hing, sprach zu mir der lustige Fink, ei du Geld. Guten Morgen, ei Geld, du wirst nicht eine schöne Welt, schöne Welt. Zink, zink, schön und flink, wie mir doch die Welt gefällt. Auch die Glockenblum am Feld hat mir lustig guter Ding, mit den Glöckchen kling, 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 kling. Ihren Morgengruß geschellt, wird nicht eine schöne Welt, schöne Welt. Kling, 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 schönes Ding, wie mir doch die Welt gefällt, heia! Und da fing im Sonnenschein gleicht die Welt zu funkeln an. Alles Ton und Farbe gewann im Sonnenschein, Blum und Vogel groß und klein. Guten Tag, guten Tag, ist nicht eine schöne Welt, ei du Geld, ei du Geld. Schöne Welt. Nun fängt auch mein Glück wohl an. Nun fängt auch mein Glück wohl an. Nein, nein, dass ich mein mir nimmer blühen kann.
Well, yeah, my grandfather owned that, and then my dad and uncle, our 4-story apartment. You saw the pictures with a toy store. We had a front, four stories front, side wing and back wing. It's quite a big apartment. And the store was underneath. And then the basement that we stored our apples and everything in. Nice. Nice toys. Well, there were 2 toy stores in Berlin, and they were both well known. And they had beautiful quality toys. And then Woolworths came in, and with all the cheap stuff. So that took a lot of business away. And then in 1933, we couldn't pay the mortgage because the business was getting bad. So we lost everything.
They actually lost the toy shop in 1933, and then it got bombed during the air raids, and now there's actually nothing there. It's interesting, when we went to the place where the toy shop stood, there really isn't anything there anymore, but some benches and some flowers and some trees. But I think she would actually kind of like it there. She often talked about small little beautiful things. You know, she talks about building her house on the lot that they lived in and putting the house in the perfect place so that they could have chairs on the front lawn and get the most of the view down the street to see the ocean. I think it's interesting that she had so much suffering in her life, so many things that were challenging, yet she could find these small little beauties in ways. There's this word in German. It's called DENKMAL. It's the word that people use for monument, but it's literally translated as think once or think for a moment about a person, a thing. There's tons of them in Berlin. You see them everywhere. DENKMAL, 500 meters east or something. And they all memorialize people or places, things that were destroyed or lost in the war. We used to go to her house a lot. She lived in a small town on Vancouver Island called Bowser, and she had a small little house there just near the ocean. And she loved having us there. She loved to cook and clean, and she found a lot of her purpose, I think, from servitude to her family. But when it came time to say goodbye and get in the car when I was a kid, she used to sort of lose control and get really upset, and she would start to cry and weep, and it was really disturbing, actually. But I think she carried a lot of guilt and shame with her about having left Germany. You know, when she left, her mother said to her, "Oh, you're never gonna come back here. You're gonna leave and we're never gonna see each other again." And I think at the time, my grandmother thought that wasn't true, but it was. She never went back. She never really spoke much more German. She moved to Canada and sort of just took up a whole new identity there. And her kids never got to meet her grandparents, and she never went back.
My mother was very neat, overly neat, and a very kind person. She'd help anybody. That's why I was so sad she drowned it. Everybody she knew that was expecting a baby, she'd get a white apron, off she'd go, help them. Then she didn't even know her own grandchildren. That was sad. We couldn't afford to go, and they didn't want to fly out or come by boat. There's no way to get together.
Ein Messer in meiner Brust, oh wie, Freud und jede Lust. So tief, es schneit so weh und schief. Ach, was ist das für ein böser Gast? Ach, was ist das für ein böser Gast? Nimmer halt er ruhen, nimmer halt er Rast. Nicht bei Tag, nicht bei Nacht, wenn ich schlief. Oh weh, oh weh. Wenn ich in den Himmel seh ich zwei blaue Augen stehen. Oh weh, oh weh. Wenn ich im gelben Felder geh, seh ich von fern das blonde Haar im Winter wehen. Oh weh, oh weh. Wenn ich aus dem Traum erfahr und höre klingen ihr Silbernacken. Oh weh, oh weh. Ich wollt, ich leg auf die schwarzen Bar, könnt nimmer die Augen aufmachen.
Right from the kitchen out. It was nice to sit there because you could look at the lighthouse and at the ocean. The view was just great. I just loved that view. And by our little creek, the area we sat in, we could look right at the ocean too. Right down the road, that's by our house. It was not parallel with the road. We set it back a bit, so we could have the view. We figured all that out to get the most of the view.
Die zwei blauen Augen von meinem Schatz, die haben mich in die weite Welt geschickt. Da musst ich Abschied nehmen vom der Straße steht ein Lindenbaum, da hab ich zum ersten Mal im Schlaf geruht. Unter dem Lindenbaum, der hat seine Blüten über mich geschneit. Da wusst ich nicht, wie das Leben tut, war alles wieder gut. Ach, alles wieder gut. Alles, alles lieb und Leid und Welt und Traum.
I know when Berlin finally fell, there were dead people all over the streets. Dead horses, dead people. And you had to go and step over them. But that's the way life is, I guess. You just have to keep doing the best you can with what the circumstances are.